Hello everyone and welcome to my coloring corner. Today is First Impressions Friday and we have a wonderful set of pencils that I had purchased from AliExpress. This is called the Kasimir. They are this set is called the Classical Summer Flower Series. They're a 120 colored pencil set of oil-based colored pencils. And yeah, they are produced in China, but they're really pretty. Look at that. And they come in a nice tin. It's got a hinged lid with a wonderful summer flower and butterfly here. And let's try not to knock everything off my desk. So it does come with some artwork that has been produced for them, as well as a color chart. So the last set of pencils I purchased at the same time as I purchased these, the Seeing Essence, didn't have a color chart other than a little tiny thing on their lid that was hard to read. So they do have a color chart, and I have gone through and translated all of the names, um, both in I went through and when I did the translation, it came up both as Japanese or simplified Chinese. So I assume since they are made in China, they're simplified Chinese. However, a couple of the names were in the simplified Chinese were a little strange. So in the Japanese verbiage, it was much better suited for the pencils. So some of them are translated from used. Some of them I used the Chinese translation, and some of them I used the Japanese translation just because it suited the color better than the Chinese translation. But the simplified Chinese and the Japanese were very, very close to the same names. So I'm assuming that it is Chinese. So if you want to translate it, you can definitely do so, either in simplified Chinese or in Japanese. But I do believe that it is Chinese. So I have gone through and I have swatched these, and of course I have recorded that for you. So we will watch the swatch. So grab your coffee and sit back, and then we'll go through the pencils and we'll take a look at them. They have 3 different layers of pencils, and they have these little elastics which make it so much easier to lift the pencils out of the tin. There's still that flimsy plastic, so just be careful picking your pencils up, of course. But it's got 3 lovely layers. I didn't have any breakage in this set, unlike the Seeing Essence set where I did have one pencil broken. This set doesn't have any pencils broken. Yay! Alright, so I will show you the barrels of the pencils and that sort of thing after the swatch, and then we will do some testing and some coloring, and we'll see how well they do on the Nina cardstock. Alright guys, so grab your coffee, sit back, relax. It is a swatch time, if you're ready. Alright, I will be right back. Okay, so that wasn't too bad. So the colors that I have them in the order of is the order that the box has them in. So when you get your pencils, you're going to find that they are in pretty much this order. The only thing I switched around because I have a thing about wanting things in color in light to dark color order. So when you get your box, it actually starts here, and the yellows are after the reds into the purples, and I didn't like that, so I switched it around and put the yellows first. But I will be actually going through it again now that I've got it swatched on one page, where I can see all the colors together. I will be going through and moving some around because I think that different ones should be in different orders. Like these three reds here, I understand why they're there for the red browns. However, they do fit better up after berries. So that sort of thing. So I will be moving things around and getting them better suited to where they belong, um, and that sort of thing so that we can work with what we have here and not lose things and misplace different colors or not use different colors because they're not in the right place. All right, so let's take a look at the swatch chart up close. Let's switch over to the close-up here. I'm going to zoom you in just so that you can see it a little bit better. Let's see. Let's zip you in. Zip you in. There we go. So we start off with our white, and it's a high luminous white, and it's actually very, very, very bright white on the black. So I like the fact that the white, even after a couple of days of moving this around, because I did swatch this a couple of days ago. With moving it around the room and that sort of thing, it still hasn't completely rubbed it off, so that's good. And then we have our yellows. These are our bright yellows, and then we go into our light cream yellows. And then we go into our medium tone yellows, our browny, tanny, orangey yellows. And then we go into our orange, and then this is also a brown orange, and I would probably move that one over or down here with the browns. And then we go into our peach tones and our deeper peach tones, our pink peach tones, and then we go into our pinks, into our reds, and then to our deep pinks, light, red violet kind of colors. And then we go into some of our gray tones like aubergine ash. That's a gray pink tone, and I would probably move it down into the pinks further. Then we have our deep purples. Red wine I would definitely move into the reds, and then we have our blue violet colors. And then we go into our blues, our blue greens, and then our medium blues, our medium blue greens, and then we start into our dark blues. Our green grays, or not green grays, our green blues, so semi and mint green are a very nice aquatic green. And then we go into our yellow greens, and then our deeper greens here, another green blue, and then of course we have our blue green here. This is another aquatic. So I would move all of those aquatics together in one area. So I've got a little bit of work to do on the swatch chart just to make it perfect the way I would use it. Then of course we've got our browns, and again this brown here I would move way down here, and I would replace that one with this one here. So this one I would move down here. These reds I would move up here. This one here, it's a red brown, so it's more of a terracotta color, and it matches well with the orange browns in the red cottons here. Then we have our dark browns and our grays. And there's quite a few grays, and there's a lot of variations to the grays. Like there's a blue gray, green gray, um, a red gray, lots of different levels of gray, which is fantastic. And then we have two metallics, which are silver and gold, which most sets have a silver and gold metallic. Just going to show you that these do actually have some glitter in them, so they do sparkle quite nicely. And then we have our light purple gray, which is a night sky kind of black. And then we have our black. And those are our colors. So let's take a look at the pencils themselves. And I'll show you some features on the pencils. There's not a lot of features on the pencils. Let's grab a dark one so you can actually see. So on the pencil itself, it does come pre-sharpened, and it does come with the typical pre-sharpened square blunt end. I have gone through and sharpened these for use today. It does come with a barcode. I don't know what the barcode means, and it does have a color number, the Kasimir logo, as well as classic color, art, oil colored pencils. And that's all the information on it. The rest of the information I have received from reading, of course, on AliExpress, as well as looking at the box. On the box, there is a website address for the company that makes this. It's not for this set particularly, but it is for the company that makes this set. All right, so we're going to do our testing here. So I'm going to grab my water brush for our water test. I'm going to flip this over. I have gone through and actually done that. So let's flip it over again here just for a minute so I can choose the colors. I think number 68 is a nice red. And then our yellow, we want number 3. It's a nice yellow. And then, of course, we want number 52, which is blue. Which is that one there. And we're trying to stick with as close to base tones as we can. So we're trying to make sure that all of the colors are primary colors. So red, blue, yellow. So red, yellow, blue, same thing. All right, so we're going to switch this over. I'm going to close this up and move it over so I don't knock it off my desk. And for our water test, we're going to start with our red. And these are an oil-based pencil, so you do need to do a bit of layering with them to get that color saturation. I'm not pressing at all hard. I have gone off the line here a bit, so we will see how the eraser works on it as well. I forgot to do an eraser test anyway, so that's how we'll do an eraser test, I guess. Now, if you do press a little bit harder, you can get that heavy saturation, which is fine for what we want. So it doesn't matter if it's light or dark. So I'm going to press a little bit harder. I just don't want to squash the pencil. I am getting a little bit of dusting the harder I press. So when I was using a fairly light hand, I wasn't getting any dusting at all. The harder I press, it seems I'm getting a little bit more dusting. So they do crumble a bit under pressure, but not enough to really worry too much about it. Just make sure that you use your brush and remove any dust before you run your hand over it. Otherwise, you're going to pick that up and send it on over to the next area. So there is a bit of dusting there. Let's dust that off. And then we're going to take our eraser pencil here. Um, Clean it. It had some blue on it, and we don't want any blue on the page. So let's see if our eraser works on it. And the eraser pencil did lift that off, which is good. Okay. So there is our red. Let's do our yellow. And the yellow is a little bit smoother, a little bit softer, and that could be because there's less pigment in yellow than there is in red. Same with blue, will have more pigment than the yellow. And I am pressing a little bit harder. Just trying to get that color down there as quickly as possible. So make sure that you dust it off with your brush, otherwise you are going to drag that pigment. And then our blue. Really pretty colors. It's a nice deep red and a really nice blue as well. So far I'm not hating them. And this is on a fairly toothy cardstock. This is the I do believe it's the Nina, but I'll have to check just to make sure. But it could have switched into my my other cardstock, which is a little bit toothier than the Nina, I think. My husband loaded my printer with different levels of paper, and because I was doing different things, it needed more than one type of paper. Alright, just going to go this way as well, just to fill in those. Because we want it to resemble what we would be doing on the page. So I've made sure that there's a good level of saturation there, because basically what happens when the reason why I do the water test is a lot of times we use things to enhance our coloring, such as stickles, such as water-based pens that have glitter in them, gel pen, that sort of thing. All of these are a water-based product, and if your pencil does move with water, it could potentially move with the product that you're using, depending upon how hard you scrub and whether or not there's any sort of resistance from the pencil itself. Usually the higher wax contented pencils will have more of a resistance to water than the oil-based pencils. So you may find that the pigment in oil-based pencils will run faster or more with water than with your wax-based pencils. Alright, so we're going to take our water and we're going to brush it up. Now I'm not going to scrub this, I'm just going to do it as gently as I would with something that I was using to enhance. So that's another thing as well, is sometimes, and most pencils will do this, if you scrub on a pencil with something that's wet, you will move that pigment. You will break down the binders that are holding that pigment in place. So the red didn't move. My yellow didn't move. Now blue is one of the ones that usually moves. I'm just going to make sure that I have water on there, but not too much water. And it also does not move. So they did not move at all with the water, And I can tip this up so you can see that there is liquid on there. There you go. But they don't seem to have moved with that liquid. No, it is. The longer the liquid sits on it, it does seem to be breaking it down a little bit, but not enough to move it around. All right, so does not move with water. Good to know. However, I always recommend that even if your pencil is showing water resistance, please make sure that you use a sealer, either a Caran d'Ache blender or some sort of blender to blend that into your paper so that if you do have any possibility of movement, you don't move it and ruin your picture. Now we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to do a smudge test. The reason for the smudge test is when I color, I have a tendency to rub my hand, the edge of my hand on the page as I'm moving across it. So if I'm coloring something here and then coloring something over here, my hand's going to go back and forth across that. And I want to make sure that I am aware of the possibility of moving that pigment so that I can choose a better system of either coloring the page or blending that color in, usually with a Caran d'Ache blender. The reason why I like the Caran d'Ache is it is a very heavy waxed blender. So it actually seals things in and gives you a nice coating that protects your coloring. And it makes it nice and bright and cheery. Um, but sometimes some pencils just don't agree with that blender. I do have a couple of different sets that do not agree with that blender. And for those sets, I usually use a Derwent blender, and it seals it just as well, and burnishes it very nicely. So if you find that your pencils don't like the Caran d'Ache blender, don't use it. Use something else. But the Caran d'Ache blender I have found is one of the best by far. Another really good one is the Lyra. The Lyra, I think it's Splendor Blender. It's very nice. Works very well. So I finished coloring that area and brushed it off. Now I'm going to color this area here. Just make sure that you use your brush a lot as well and push off those additional pieces of pigment. Otherwise, you can pick them up and move them around, not only with your hand, but with your other pencil as well. So if you have some loose pigment there, like say the yellow, the blue can pick that up and end up putting some sort of green streak through your page. And just putting down as much color as I would on a typical coloring page. So I hope you're all excited. Next week we will be doing a page that is been split 4 ways between Shannon Tonye from Shannon Chopin Hayes, Tonya from Appetite for Coloring, Sarah from Sarah the Moonlight Crafter, and myself. We will all be coloring a piece of this one picture. And then we're going to put it all together and take a look at all the different styles that we have and all the different color choices that we make and make one cohesive picture. Hopefully it works out. I think it will. We all color, we all have a good sense of color. So, all right, going to take my finger and I'm just going to push on the pigment and see if it smudges with movement of my hand. And it does smudge a little bit in the red. I'm going to test the yellow. Not as much movement out of the yellow. And movement out of the blue. So it does smudge a little bit. So make sure that you fill in or blend your areas to make sure that that pigment stays still. Now that the water has gotten in there into the pigment, there is a little bit of movement from the blue and a little tiny bit of movement from the red as well. So also make sure you've sealed everything so that you can use your water-based products as well. Now we're going to do a gradient blend here, so I'm going to grab some pinks. Let's grab some pinks. Let's see, which ones do we want? So we want 63, 64, and 65. Yeah. So we want these three. Get over here. So we're going to start from light to dark. And we're going to do a gradient blend here. So we're going to start with our number 63, which is our lightest pink. And we're just going to put down, and again, because these are an oil-based pencil, we're going to layer that up. Unlike wax-based pencil, you can't really smush these. Basically, you'll take up all the tooth of the page without getting the saturation. So if you just layer them up and let them saturate that tooth, you'll get a better level of color. So I'm just going to build that up in the darkest area here and make sure that I put the feather mark down here. So this is the area that we're going to blend those two colors together, creating that blend. Alright, so the next one in our gradients is number 64. And we're going to go over top of the area that we left a tail for. And we're going to come out past it here for the tail for the next color. Just build that color up. Like so. And then we have our number 65. Again, going into that tail. And blending that color out. Like so. Now to complete that blend, we can just take our lightest color, which is this one here, and we can go over the entire thing and blend those all together. I'm pushing a little bit harder to get those pigments into what was left of the white spot. And it does do a very nice gradient blend from light, medium to dark, which is really pretty. I like it. Alright, so let's do our rainbow blend. This is going to test and tell us whether or not you can take a completely different color and create a new color. Of course, the base colors, the primary colors of red, blue, and yellow are going to give us those base colors. our primaries as well as our secondaries, such as orange and green. So what we're going to start with is our red, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with our gradient. We're going to put down a layer, make sure that we put a tail, and then we're going to thicken the layer here, leaving that tail open for the next color. Now the tail is what we're going to blend into, which is going to create that second color. So make sure that I'm leaving enough room there for that second color. Now, one of the things that you will notice when you use red and yellow together to make orange, you're going to pick up some of that red on your yellow. So make sure that you wipe off your pencil before you move on to another area. Otherwise, you're going to get an orange area where you wanted a yellow. All right, so I'm going to go in with the yellow now, and we're going to go over top of the red here, creating that orange. Now I will be going back and forth between the pencils because, like I said, these are and I'm going to bring that out quite a bit here because I want the yellow to have a yellow area as well as the green area. So since these are a oil-based pencil, you do have to build that color up. So if you want an orange, you got to go back and forth with the red and the yellow to fill in that tooth as well as to combine that color. So just going back and forth between the two colors. Just to make sure that there's a good combination that fills the tooth of the page. Like so. So we do have a red and we have an orange. I'm going to fill in the white spot over here with the red. But it did convert to an orange tone. And as you can see, I have picked up that red on my yellow. So you have to wipe that off. Otherwise, you are going to end up with that red in your yellow area. So I'm going to darken, see, like that. I'm going to darken the yellow because we want it to be a nice dark yellow. And then we've got our area here for the blue to combine into. Don't use your hand. Evelyn will yell at you. Sorry, Evelyn. And then over here for our blue. Building that color. The more blue you add, the darker the green is going to be. The more yellow you add to that, the lighter it's going to be. Just going to fill in that white spot a little bit. And again, if you don't wipe off the blue that you've picked up on your pencil, you will end up with a green area when you go to use that pencil next. Just going to fill in the white spot here. And we have a good green there as well. So definitely combines well for our rainbow colors. Now I'm going to grab my blender here as well as a burnisher. So I have the Derwent Burnisher as well as the Caran d'Ache blender. I don't know where my Derwent blender went, and I don't think I have another one. So I'll use the Burnisher instead, which works pretty much the same as a blender. It just kills the tooth of the page a lot more than a blender does. Sometimes with the Derwent blender, you can blend those pencils and then go over top of them and add more color. Alright, so we're going to start with we're going to do our gradient from the pinks here. So we're going to start with our light pink, and we're going to leave as much of that white spot as we can, but we're still going to put down enough pigment for that blender to move it around. We can also use the white pencil of the set as a blender, and we will try that on the other area. The one thing that you need to remember with the white is that white will knock the pigment down in what you're doing. So if you want to blend with your pencil instead of a colorless blender, just make sure that you blend with the lightest pencil you're using or your white if you want to knock the color down a little bit. So if you want to lighten that color up, use your white. And with some pencil sets, it doesn't do anything because the white is way too translucent to actually lighten your colors, but it will blend them. In this set, the white is quite vibrant, so it will tone down the color quite a bit if I use white on it. Another thing I have noticed, especially with oil-based pencils, is sometimes the temperature in the room does have a tendency to work against you. Alright, so I'm going to take my pencil sharpener here and I'm going to sharpen this up just a little bit to remove any pigment from the last thing I blended with it. Like so. We're going to start from our light to our dark. So I'm going to blend the light. And that blended very nicely, removing that white spot. And then we're going to blend the medium tone into the light. Blending those two colors together. And then blending the white spot out of the medium tone. And then also with the dark. And we're going to blend that white spot right out. Now if you don't have enough pigment on the page, the Caran d'Ache blender will look like it's picking up your pigment, and all it's doing is it's just rubbing off a lot of the blender itself into the pigment so that it fills those holes. Alright, so it worked really well for blending with the Caran d'Ache. And now we're going to do a couple of different test areas with different colors. So in order to show you the color change with a white, I'm going to use the blue. So I'm going to do an entire area. I'm leaving that white spot open, but I'm going to put down plenty of pigment for that white to move around. And so you can see the color change. And then we'll do a red blotch as well with the burnisher, so you can see how that works as well. Alright, so there's our blue blotch, and we'll be doing that with the white pencil. And then we're going to put a red blotch here, and we're going to use the Derwent burnisher. Now the difference between a burnisher and a blender, like I said, is a burnisher will knock the tooth right out of the page. So if you are not finished with that area, don't use a burnisher. If you want to layer more on top of a blended area, make sure that you use a blender. Okay, so I've made that nice and dark. And we're going to dust those off so that I don't pick any up with the white. And then we're going to use our white pencil to blend that. Another thing that I did notice with these pencils is they are one of the few that advertises that it's ready to go out of the box, and they are. They don't have a coating or anything on them, and they just lay down color right out of the box, which is great. So as you can see the difference in the color there, we had a fairly dark blue, and now we are going into a much lighter blue. The more white we add, the lighter it gets, of course. And of course it did blend that quite nicely. Alright, now we're going to use the burnisher, and we're going to do the same thing. This is going to just pull what pigment is on the page right into that white spot, and just press that white spot down. I'm filling it all in, and of course not changing the color at all, like so. So it does very well, but like I said, it does push all of the pigment into what is left um, of the tooth of the paper. So let's talk cost. The cost of this set on AliExpress for US delivery will cost you $125.80. That does include shipping, so it's $114 something, and then there's $11 and some odd cents for shipping. So it does come out to $125.80. If you have sales tax in your area, of course, you will add your sales tax to that. So it's approximately $1.05 per pencil. So to me, that's not really budget friendly. Anything over $1 really isn't all that budget friendly for 120 pencils. These pencils do react very nicely. They are a very nice pencil for that price. So I think personally, yes, they are worth it. If you have the budget for it. If you are just looking for a budget-friendly set of pencils that work quite well, um, there are other ones out there that are much more budget-friendly. We're going to color with these. We're going to do the flowers here. And they are numbered, however, they are not named. So if that's something that bothers you, that's another thing that you have to look at. The names are on the swatch chart, so if you want to translate them or utilize my swatch chart, you can definitely do so. I will put this swatch chart in the information below the video here. However, I will be changing it, and that I will update that link once I change the swatch chart. So I will be redoing the swatching because I don't like the order that they are in. So I'm just taking number 63 and doing a base coat on the petals. Because the pink in the set of pinks that I have are not something I want to wash down with adding a light color on top of it. It's better to add the dark colors on top of your light colors if you want them to stay dark. So if you want to wash them down a little bit, put them first. If you want them to stay nice and vibrant and dark, put them on top of your lightest color. Start with light to dark if you want them to stay dark. And then we're going to use our darkest down here. Like so. Alright. Again, and then once you're all done and you have all of your dark and medium areas done, you can go back through and brighten or darken your light area. So that you have a good highlight on it. Alright, and then our dark. They're coloring really nicely. I'm liking the movement of color here. It's going down very smoothly. And it is a little bit softer than I expected it to be for an oil-based pencil. It does feel like it is smushing down a little bit quicker than a regular oil-based pencil. So I think they do have a soft wax in there with the oil basing. And I'm not going into the deepest areas with the light color. I'm just going in just enough to touch it and drag it out and blend it together, like so. Alright, I'm going to do this petal here as well. Basically just putting that medium tone in our heaviest of shadow areas here. And the veining of the petal as well. So the swatch chart, of course, the pictures that I have on the swatch chart are provided by the program that I use to create the swatch chart. Because I do have a purchased subscription to that program, I am able to use the artwork that's in there. I do have license to do so. And it's just a very basic, very, very simple picture, but it does give you the ability to see how well the pencils are going to do for shading, for dimension, and that sort of thing, which is great. And they're pretty. That was my main thing, is I want it to be pretty. Alright, now we're going to add our dark. And I'm just adding the dark down at the base and blending it into that medium. In the heaviest shadow areas. Like so. And I think it's doing really well. This paper is taking it very, very nicely. Alright, and then we take our lighter pink And we just reestablish that highlight area. Like so. Alright, and then we're going to take our yellow and we're going to just fill in the center here. So I think the pinks did quite well. We're going to take our red and we're going to give it a bit of a sharpen here. And we're going to do our ladybug as well. Then we'll do the butterfly as well because it's a bit of red and yellow. So here's our red. And of course you can get different variations of your red, of course with different levels of pigment that you put down on the page. You know, so if you have an area that you want to have a highlight in and you only want to use one pencil, just don't press as hard in that area. And when you blend it, start in that area and work out to your darker areas. Like for example, I want that to be highlighted. So these areas here I'm doing darker, but I'm leaving that area open and fairly light. Same with this side here. I want that center area to be fairly highlighted. So I'm just going to very lightly go over it with a couple of layers and go darker around it. Like so. And then we have our ladybug. And I think it did quite well for that. For the one pencil ability, it's done quite well. Like I said, the tooth of the paper that's showing through there is done on purpose. You know, basically you can utilize that tooth of the paper to give yourself a highlight. Embrace the white, as Shannon says. Alright, so we're going to do the same sort of thing up here on the butterfly, but we're going to actually do a little bit of blending on there as well. So we're going to use some red, but we're going to use some yellow as well and turn that red into orange. Hopefully. So we're going to start with our red, and we're going to go into the deepest areas with the red, and I'm just going to flick it because the end areas, the end bits, is where our orange is going to be. So the heavier areas down here where I'm going a little bit heavier with the red, it's going to remain red. But up here where I'm going a little lighter, it's going to become orange. And of course the very, very tip itself I want to be in that yellow tone. So we want the yellow to still have some yellow ability. So make sure that you give an area for the yellow to be yellow. Alright, so we've got our red down. Now we're going to sharpen our yellow up a little bit. And we're going to work our way down. So we're going to do our yellow first on the edges here. And then we're going to work our way down the red. getting into it with that orange color. Now, an area that you find that the red is a little bit stronger, you can of course go over it, or you can leave that strong red. If you want it to be an orange kind of color, go over it. If you want it the strong red, leave it the strong red. Like so. And then you have your butterfly wings. Give him a little bit of a yellow body here. And there we have our butterfly. Maybe we'll make him green. Let's make him green. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue to his body here. And then we'll add some more yellow. Alright, so I've colored with them a little bit. I've used them for the swatch, other than the fact that I don't like the order the swatch is in, and I will be reordering that. They lay down very, very nicely. They blend together beautifully. I'm going to switch you over to the other screen here so that you can see the blends a little bit better. Maybe. So yeah, they blend really nice. Like you get a really good red, orange, and green with the blending of those three colors. And of course they do the gradient blend very nicely as well. You can definitely do a one color coloring with them, which is fantastic. And the Caran d'Ache blender works really nicely on them. The white works really nicely on them, as well as the Burnisher working very nicely in removing that white spot. So yeah, in all, they are a bit of an expensive pencil. They are definitely not budget friendly. They, like I said, they did pass the water. However, they do show a little bit of seepage if you leave it wet. They did fail a little bit of the smudge test. I would definitely make sure that you burnish that before you start rubbing your hand across it. They did a gradient very nicely, and they did a rainbow very nicely. And as I said, they blended very nicely with all three types of blendings, different blending techniques. They are approximately $1.05 US per pencil, and of course that price will go up with the different levels of taxation. But if it's something that you want to add to your collection, of course, I will leave you a link in the description below the video to the AliExpress store that I purchased them from. And take a look at them, read the information, take a look at the different options, because there's several different options in the store that I purchased these from. They've got different set numbers, I think from 24 up to 120. They also have a watercolor set, and they also have sets that come with different paper packages as well. So take a look at the sets and that sort of thing, and base your decision on that as well. All right, guys, with that, my first impression of these pencils is they're a really, really nice pencil, and of course I will be coloring with them more, and the more I color with them throughout the next week will determine, I will tell you more as we color with them, whether or not they are working in the coloring paper, or if it's something that we want to switch to a different pencil, or if I suddenly decide that they have fallen apart and they're splitting in half and I don't like them, I will give you all of that information next week. They're not. Just saying. Um, they have no signs of splitting whatsoever. So just letting you know. All right, guys, until next time, thank you all very much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this segment of First Impressions Friday. Hopefully, it was informative and at least a little bit entertaining. Always remember to like, comment, and subscribe to any YouTube artist that you enjoy. This does help us out with our YouTube analytics as well as our own personal, little boost of self-esteem there. And of course, remember to relax, color, and stay safe, everyone. Until next time, bye bye for now.